All right, here we go. Jeff, JARRETT, ha ha, double J, Jeff Jarrett. I can't do it as good as him, but I wanted to intro with it anyway. He's got a brand new podcast, My World with Jeff Jarrett. It's debuting May 4th with the Podfather of podcasts, Thompson. That's a great get right there. This is going to be interesting because Jeff Jarrett, what a career way back when. I think he started selling popcorn. Tell us, Jeff, tell us about it. Were you selling programs, popcorn? What were you doing? You did everything. You've done everything. You're still doing everything.
Jim, man, it's been a while since we caught up. I appreciate you taking a little time out of your day to talk my world. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, when Conrad, gosh, it's been 4 years now ago that he reached out, and I met him through Bruce Pritchard, and they had gotten something to wrestle with just going. And obviously now it's blossomed into a team of 7 or 8 on ad-free shows, a huge, I'll call it infrastructure, the Podfather, as you referenced him. But, you know, Jim, and again, we do go way back. And so, you know, I started in this business in the mid 80s. My grandmother got into the business in 1946, selling tickets, selling programs. And she worked her way up to what we would call a CFO, a chief financial officer today. And my dad obviously followed in her footsteps on the business side. And then he became a promoter and then a wrestler. And then, you know, he promoted for a long time. And so I'm a third generation, been around a while. And very from a young age, I was always fascinated at all facets of the business. Yes, I did start out promoting young small towns and putting up, we called them window cards or posters, and selling popcorn and peanuts and Cracker Jacks and hot dogs, and pulling the ring truck and setting the ring truck up and getting the wrestlers' jackets, all the little ins and outs. And so when we dive into my world, we're going to tell stories from my very earliest days. And just this month, I celebrated my 35th year in the industry. So from the early days to WWF to WCW, TNA, all points in between, all the way to the Hall of Fame stage, and then some. So we're going to dive into it. And you know, Jim, you're a longtime journalist, and you can probably articulate this better than I can. But the story behind the story is what's fascinating to folks. I've done on this media tour, and a lot of folks have said, Jeff, why now? And I got to give partial credit. You know, obviously, first and foremost, Conrad. He stayed on me. He's exposed me to a lot of things from a business side and this and that. But during COVID, and I watched The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and just that whole story behind the story and the run and the way we consume talent. The way we consume entertainment on demand. You know, you can go to Netflix or Hulu, and now the podcasting genre has entered into that space. It's on demand entertainment. And so me and Conrad are going to tell some good stories, and I hope they're entertaining. But you know, peeling back the layers of the onion on the story in our industry, as you are well aware, there's a lot of different ins and outs, and a lot of things may not make a lot of sense on the surface. They may not make a lot of sense after we dig into it, but you're going to hear the true story behind the story.
My World with Jeff Jarrett, and he says he hopes entertaining. What do you mean hope, Jeff? You're the greatest entertainer. Come on.
Okay. Well, Jim, I appreciate you saying that. I don't know if that's completely accurate these days, but no. I've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun over my career, and we're going to get into singing with My Baby Tonight, and wrestling. I'm the greatest intercontinental champion of all time, and then obviously the entertainment component. And you know, our business. It is, to me, again, before I was a promoter and before I was a wrestler, I was a wrestling fan, and the entertainment component of all different facets of it, and the characters that I've been around, you know, Jerry the King Lawler, and a lot of people now knowing as the commentator, the color commentator on Raw, but the you know, there's different sides, and the performer of Jerry Lawler. So from Jackie Fargo to Jerry Lawler to, who knows, Kurt Hennig, Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels, all the way up. There's a whole cast of characters in our industry that are very entertaining. And so telling those stories and the uniqueness, so to speak, I'm excited about doing it. And with the partner being Cumulus, their distribution platform, anywhere you want to subscribe to a podcast, you can find us. And it all starts Tuesday, May 4th, and every Tuesday thereafter.
Jeff, you've had many, many highs, many great moments. You've also had some lows. It's part of the journey. It's a roller coaster journey. You've been able to survive and go through this whole journey. Were there any reservations about talking about anything with this podcast upcoming?
No, and that's something that, at this stage of my career, that, as we grow, and I'm not really just talking about in chronological age, but grow as a person, I would have never really looked at it through this perspective of, if I can say something on our podcast that may help a wrestler, a wrestler coming up through the ranks, or a promoter, or just a person. I've had a lot of life experience in my time, from upbringing. My mom's side of the family were all educators. They were school teachers and principals. And so a lot of folks don't know that. So half of my family is educators. My father's side of the family is the wacky world of professional wrestling / sports entertainment, growing up in that environment and then getting into it. And I'm one of the last guys that really experienced the territory days and the ins and outs of learning the industry from that perspective. And then obviously WWF and then WCW, back and forth during the Monday Night Wars, and then launching my own promotion. And then you said, it goes without saying, the roller coaster ride of my personal life. It's all about, I don't look at problems as problems anymore. They're really opportunities to grow. And if I can share something that may help someone else, I'm all about that. And I think in this podcast, and me and Conrad, we've had some of those conversations, that we would be having a conversation. He'd say, Jeff, that's the kind of stuff you need to share, your life experience that may relate and may be entertaining as a part of the story, but it may be something that a listener may take with them and who knows, make a difference in their day.
Well, it's interesting, too, that you mentioned your mom's side of the family was in teaching and education, which I never knew. And you think about it, Jeff, you combined both, because you actually became a student of professional wrestling and then also a teacher of the game and the business. So I think it's an interesting combination of what you've been able to do, taken from both sides, your father and the great work he was able to do, and then also your mom's side as well.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, my grandmother, she was one of the first ones in the Nashville area that she started the adult education program. And as a grandkid, a little kid, I didn't know what that was about. But obviously getting older, and there's a couple of schools in the Middle Tennessee area that are named after family members so they were, they just weren't school teachers. They were really educators. They gave their entire life to it. And my grandmother, they had to kick her out. At those days, I think you had to retire at 65 and she wouldn't leave. And then at 70, they wanted her to leave. I think she was into her early 70s and they said, you have to retire. And she still didn't. So work ethic, and I'm blessed with that. I'm very fortunate with that. Both sides of the family, they basically, I had no choice, but I did. I learned it in a real good way. That the work ethic is, you can talk a great game, but if you don't get up every morning, put on your work boots and go to work, you're just not going to live a fulfilled life. You don't get a lot of fulfillment being a couch potato and that kind of stuff. So it was ingrained in me to get up every day, put on your work boots and go to work. And I'm very thankful that was instilled in me.
It's interesting. We have several more minutes to go, and I want to touch on some things too. Obviously, I don't want to get into a lot because let everybody listen and go to the podcast to hear the great stories. But you mentioned Jackie Fargo, and you used the Jackie Fargo strut, which you thought was awesome. And you mentioned Jerry the King Lawler. There's another guy I wanted to get a little bit, which is Robert Fuller, Tennessee Lee. I never knew until I interviewed him how many years. Hey, I learn too every day. How many years I've been doing this? I interviewed him a few years ago. I had no idea the history of his family in the pro wrestling business. And when I think of the Harts, the Jarretts, the Samoans, think of some the Armstrongs. Then I'm thinking the Fullers too. And I'm just curious what your reaction is toward him. And you got to work with him as Tennessee Lee when you were in WWF.
Well, I got to work with him in Tennessee for about a year and a half, 2 years. And he was, he's probably what, 10 years older than me, 15 years, anyway, older than me. So he taught me a lot about tag team wrestling. And he also taught me a lot about the art of the promo. Robert is a great talker. And Tennessee Lee was a different form of talking. And I'm talking about Tennessee Stud, Robert Fuller, his seriousness, his tone, and how to shift gears in a promo, his skill set. It's really, really unique. And I learned so much from him. But if you really know the history of our families intertwined in so many ways, but Nick Goulas was a promoter here in Tennessee, and his partner was Roy Welch. It was Goulas Welch Wrestling. Well, Roy Welch is Robert's grandfather. So our families literally have worked together generational, like 3 and 4 generations. So when me and Robert got together and became tag partners, and before we were partners, he came in and beat the hell out of me, and we had lots and lots of matches. And he's a guy that taught me a lot about selling and how to sell and different things. And his cousin Jimmy Golden. So and he's a 3rd generation or 2nd generation. So yeah, I could go on and talk, and I can't say enough good things about Robert and the things that he taught me just by watching him. And I can remember vividly many times, I'll call it Saturday morning TV, but he'd walk through that curtain, and I'll just say Robert might have had a long night the night before, but when the red light went on and it was time for him to perform and lay down a promo, my goodness, the talent oozed out of him, and he could cut a promo. I wish folks that were fans of Tennessee Lee or fans of Tennessee Lee could go back and look at him before he came Tennessee Lee and see his territories. And, him and his brother ran promotions in Knoxville and Alabama and Northern Florida and the Panhandle. Long line of promoters.
Jarrett Fuller connection. I don't know if anyone could beat that tag team combination of family history right there.
There you go.
And it's interesting.
A lot of good stuff.
He's doing his stuff today with MLW. It's still going strong. He's doing some work there. It's awesome to see. He's still got it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Robert's a unique talent, and his mouth. He's always been very savvy. Businessman, promo guy, salesman. Him and Ron, fantastic businessmen.
Well, businessman and future. I remember talking to you in South Florida, Plantation, Florida, at a car dealership. You enlightened me of the business at that time, very young, getting into it. You were nice enough to take your time to do an interview after the autograph signing. And it was just amazing hearing you talk about the business and seeing the future and the vision. And the things you were saying were spot on. To see how the evolution of the business went. I always remembered that. I always remembered that with you. And that's why I was glad to see how you've been able to evolve and elevate and just help shape the business. And we'll close it with this. There's so many things I could ask you. I want to just touch on this one, though. And I know you have quotes. You love quotes. And you're very inspiring, very inspired by, and you're inspiring to others with your quotes. Couple of favorite quotes you have?
Oh, wow, Jim. Before we get into this, one quote that I said back in '93 in Plantation, Florida, in that interview, and I'll never forget it. For some reason, we connected that day, and sort of that was the beginning of our friendship. But I said, Jim, there's going to come a day when wrestling will be able to be viewed 7 nights a week. And here we are in 2021. It's on 5 nights a week, but with, who would have thought back then, social media and YouTube and on demand, and hell, you can watch it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But that's funny you brought up that interview, because it clicked in my brain multiple times, and we've shared a great friendship for 30 years. But okay, a couple of quotes, man. Wow, Jim. I think this is on one of my Instagram. And speaking of social media, you can I launched my new website at Real Jeff Jarrett, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and the website. But quotes, I guess one, and this comes from another old timer who actually has it tattooed on his body. And it's live as if you know because you do. And that's really every day when we wake up, we know right from wrong, and we have a choice. You have a choice every day. Am I going to do the right thing, or am I not going to do the right thing? That's one quote. Another quote that I've always that's appropriate for this interview is to teach is to learn twice. And that's something that we all have something to teach. And if we try to give something by giving knowledge or literally a helping hand or a hello, or if you just give away a smile to someone, you have no idea how that's going to affect somebody. But when you do that, you're teaching yourself as well. You're teaching yourself that whether it's kindness or love or giving away wisdom or caring, it goes a long way. So I could go on and on. Jim, you hit a sweet spot when you talk about quotes. I could give you quotes from sports quotes, motivational quotes, fun quotes, funny quotes. It doesn't matter. But I give a quote of the day every morning on Twitter. So there you go.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much. And I'll end it with this and let you have the last word because we're a little over. But I wanted to say this too. And this isn't my quote. Actually, I saw The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, post this one time. And I really love the quote. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Boom.
Just really
very
good.
Appropriate.
Very good.
And a lot of times it's that simple. But that's something that Conrad, that when we talk, the simplicity of simple, I'll call it nuggets like that, whether it's a nugget from the industry that I've learned over the years or a life experience, but just I'll take that quote with me today. It's more important to be nice, and that's very accurate.
Okay, Jeff, and you wrap it up for us. A podcast coming out, and there's no slap. I thought it was going to be My World with Jeff Jarrett, Slap Nuts. I thought something was going to be Slap Nuts in there.
Well, and me and Conrad, the name of our LLC for the podcast is Slap Nuts LLC. So, folks, it's My World with Jeff Jarrett. First episode premieres May 4th, anywhere where you can download. But it's My World with Jeff Jarrett, dropping every Tuesday, starting next Tuesday. And again, all my social media is at Real Jeff Jarrett. You can get all the information you need on an ongoing basis. Jim, thank you for your time today, and always appreciate our friendship.